And recording.
It is Tuesday, March 31st, 7:02 p.m. Donovan Board of Finance for fiscal 27. Public hearing is in session. We're going to introduce our board members. We'll do the budget, and at the end, we'll do our best to answer questions. Myself, Dr. Cook, and any of the selectmen, first selectmen, Becky Lyons, and any other Board of Finance jump in. So, Matt Gordon is virtual. Matt's the Vice Chair, Bob Donahue, Hessian, John Muller, John Rasmus, Bob Reinhardt, all on the Board of Finance, all dedicated a lot of time. Some even gave up some of their vacation to attend some of the meetings. So I wanted to introduce them. I also want to thank Stacey Novus and Kirsten Bosco behind me and the finance team. They do an amazing job. I couldn't do it without them. And I'm sure the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen say the best thing. So I want to say thank you, all of you. So the budget process, go through our goals of budget overview, and then we'll have public comment. So you can stay on the budget process. Thank you. And I'm not used to sitting down, but when we have sorry, it's okay. It's not your fault. It's mine. This starts in September. Then in January, the Board of Ed conducts their workshops. When the Board of the Budget, of course, like the exact same thing, gets handed over to the Board of Finance. We continue the workshops. We have a public hearing. We have presentations from the BOE, the BOS. And then here we are, believe it or not, at the end of March. And the budget workshops continue. We have a public hearing and the final budget to move forward to referendum, which will be in April. And after that referendum, the next morning, Board of Finance members will set the mill rate. Well, the Board of Finance goals, one is what the community needs. The things are going on. COVID happened a few years ago, but there's always something changing, always something going on. We tried very hard to minimize the mill rate impact on the taxpayers. We do have a long range financial plan, and you're going to see that come into effect with the Madison investment plan, or the MIP, as we call it, budget forecasting. So as we know, the school renewal project that was passed by the voters, that debt service is starting to come on. Madison investment plan helps us as that debt service grows. We reduce the capital spending to offset that. You'll see that in the presentation. So there's a plan for debt service. And we still want to continue to fund LCFP, our capital program, with the main goal as we continue stability in our property taxes, as we continue to support the operational services in the town. So before you flip to the next page, there's a couple of things that stood out this year, and I'm sure you're heard from it, but health insurance went up drastically. You're going to see that in the town side, you're going to see it in the Board of Ed side. I will give this team, Madison, and prior to me, a lot of credit. You planned for a lot of things. You had a health reserve fund, which I would argue most towns don't. I can tell you a few that don't. So you do a lot of things well. So we did have to use some of that health reserve fund to reduce the impact, but I'm going to go through that. But it's compliments to all of you and the team you have in place. So if you go to the fiscal 27 recommended budget, and I'm just going to go down and highlight the health insurance for the town at this moment. It went up 11%, but in reality, we used $200,000 from the reserve fund on the town side. So I said it was it's almost a 20% increase, but because you had the reserve fund, we used some of that money. And then you can see, if you look at capital, fiscal 26, it was $5,193,031. In fiscal 27, we lowered that because we knew the debt service, and this was part of the Madison investment plan. We knew that debt service, obviously, little by little, was going to increase. So that was part of the plan. So we didn't have a drastic impact to the taxpayers. You can see the difference is about $350,000. So the total term budget for fiscal 27 is $36,270,305, which is a 2.7% increase, which would be more had we not used some of the reserve fund. The change was $960,000. Dr. Cook's here. I'm sure he'll tell you the exact same thing that I'm going to say now about the health insurance, but the recommended budget for fiscal 27 is $67,049,784. The increase is $2,652,122, about a 4% increase. But $1.2 million of that is just the increase in the health insurance. That's with the offset of the health. So there's a drastic health insurance increase, and I just want the public to be aware of it. So the fiscal recommended budget combined is 103,760,099. It's about 3.61% increase. So what's driving the town budget increase? Half the town budget growth is driven by increases in personnel costs. The original utilities, cost of living adjustments, inflation, go down the list of things. The healthcare is a major driver, as I said earlier. We do have rising debt service, but it's something that has been planned for with the Madison investment plan. So it's not like you just added the debt service without capital, without understanding what we did. Or if you have the issues of 1-year notes and the bonds, we had a 1.5 million increase in debt service, which was offset by the 1.1 million reduction in CIP contributions. The town of Madison capital funding for the Board of Finance, fiscal 27, meaning the CIP budget and the debt service is $8,435,000. You can see the annual percentage increase. This is part of the, and I'm going to say this a lot because I think it's a very important planning tool, but the annual percent increase on the capital funding and mid plan is 4%. We try to keep it level so we don't have those spikes. As the debt service grows, we reduce the CIP a little bit. We're trying to keep it manageable for the town and taxpayers. We do understand that this project is done and we have to pay for it. And we're trying to have been, and that's all for the finance team and having the best way to minimize that impact. So the town of Madison capital expenditures by department for fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 31. It's important for me to note it's fiscal 27, that the CIP plan, just because it's in the budget for fiscal 28, fiscal 29, fiscal 30, fiscal 31, doesn't mean it necessarily will happen, but I just wanted to be mindful of that. So the total capital expenditures for fiscal 27 of $7,133,903. The education is a little under 2 million, general government under 10. You can see that facilities $1 million, public safety, public works, and then technology. Technology, as we all know, is always changing. Town of Madison Board of Finance recommended expenditures. So again, I'm going to highlight where we were with the health insurance, because on the reserve fund on the Board of Education side, we used $800,000 in reserve fund, and on the town side, it's $200,000 to minimize that 21% increase, about half of that. So the Board of Education and town of Madison, the expenditure budget for fiscal 27 $1,376,099, an increase of $3,615,266, 3.61% increase. So a couple things on the revenue side. Town of Madison projected revenue for fiscal 27. One thing, several things to note. First of all, we did increase our tax collection rate to 99%, up 0.25. It was 98.75, increased to 99. We went back 20 years. We've at least hit 99 plus those 20 years. We feel as a board comfortable that we will hit that at least. There's a lot of talk about using the fund balance, get rid of the fund balance, spend it, we need it for here and there. And I've said this repeatedly, we had current revenue, no issue putting it in the budget. So we increased by $100,000 the use of interest on our reserve funds to $2 million. That's reoccurring revenue. That went up some. And then we have other revenue, whether it's building permits, local grants, federal grants, things of that nature. We also reduce so far, but it could change, the use of fund balance from 500,000 to 400,000. So to highlight that, the tax collection rate increased to 99%. The interest revenue on our fund balance, undesignated fund balance, went up by 100,000. And then we again used some of the health reserve to offset the spike in the health insurance increase. And with this, we have a potential use of 400,000 with the undesignated fund balance. As I say that, and since I've been on this board, we pretty much always use a number, 400,000, 500,000, one to 750. I'm sure Stacey will correct me immediately, but don't. We've never had to, at the end of the year, because of the town and the Board of Ed's ability to control expenditures and the revenue offsets, we've always had a surplus. So again, but it's there. And if you don't have the fund balance or the use of fund balances, that ability goes away. So this is just a history of where we were. So from fiscal 22 to fiscal 27, the town budget went up 3.74, 6, 4.78, 4.24. Fiscal 27, 2.73. Total education budget. Again, when you look at the numbers, hats off to everyone, 1.23, 1.66, 2.52, 3.03, this year 4.09. Back out the health insurance, you'll see it would be less than that on the town and on the Board of Education side. So the total combined budget increase for fiscal 27 is 3.61. The potential, as I say potential, because it says as soon as BOF uses $400,000 from the undesignated fund balance, mill rate increase is 2.85%, which would translate, again, these are, I don't want to say hypotheticals, that's my rule, but these are, examples. It would be a 0.64 mill increase from last year's mill rate. The town referendum is April 28th, 2026. Board of Finance, I believe, meets at 8:30 this morning to set the mill rate. So I have Dr. Cook here, the first selectman of taking lines, and I'm here, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Board of Ed. If anybody would have any questions, you state your name and address for the record, and we'll do virtual and in person. I'd ask you politely to keep it to 3 minutes and give everybody a chance. If anybody would like to, Bruce, I know you want to say something. You want to go first? You are on the selectmen.
All right, I'll open the show.
So name and address for the record. I don't know where you live.
Bruce Wilson, I live next to him on Dairy Hill. So this year, the Board of Selectmen spent a lot of time working on how to integrate the Meals on Wheels program into the normal operating budget. In the past, it was operated through what was intended to be an endowment, ended up not being enough, and the capital, the principal of that endowment has been all but consumed and will run out this year. So we came up with a plan to ease the program onto the town budget to the tune of $27,000 this year. The balance of what we expect to be about a $70,000 to $75,000 annual expense, we would be deciding in the next budget cycle. The reason being, we've moved over from the town accepting donations to the Madison Foundation, a private entity accepting donations, which are now tax deductible. We don't know how much those are going to be, but we estimated it would be in the $20,000 to $25,000 a year range. So we expected to include in the budget next year another $20,000 or so and ease the budget in over a 2-year period. Board of Finance, in consideration of the Board of Selectmen budget, exercised its prerogative to cut the budget back a little bit. I think that's fine. However, you chose the Meals on Wheels program to cut. You cut $20,000 out of the Meals on Wheels program, which now means that it will most likely be underfunded. I know there are plans to backfill a deficit with a special appropriation. My concern is this is going to be a normal operating expense of the town to some degree. By shuffling it over into a special appropriation, we are taking an operating expense out of the town and funding it through the special appropriations. Special appropriate for the roads, for unplanned expenses, for emergencies, that's fine. But an expense that we know we're going to have every single year, doing that with a special appropriation, I think is wrong. Say to the Board of Selectmen, find the 30 grand, find the 20 grand, that's fine, right? But don't take it out of that particular program, especially when the Board of Selectmen already identified it as an operating priority for this upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm going to comment on that just for board's sake. I appreciate your input. We had conversations about that. We decided to put $100,000 into from the undesignated fund balance to help jumpstart that. Our thought process was we believe in Madison people. We believe we can raise the money, but if not, the money's there to keep that great program in place and to give them a little head start if needed. I'm hopeful that we can actually raise the money privately, and there's some discussion here. Some people feel 15 and 20 is a lot of money. I don't think we're going to really know until we try, and I know it was funded before. So that was our thought process, not that we remove the money. We know it's a very important program and people need it. It was actually to kind of help it along. So that's why we did it. Anyone else in the public would like to speak? Name and address for the record, sir.
Jan Erworth, 4 Randy Drive. I have a question and a comment. Since the healthcare is such a big factor here, I'd like to know, do the employees and the teachers contribute to the healthcare costs?
Yes. Yes. Okay, Craig. And then Corey bedside. Why don't you take that?
Craig Cook, Superintendent. So teachers in Madison contribute one of the highest in the state. They contribute 24%. So almost a quarter of the increase will be borne by teachers in Madison. All our employee groups pay a certain percentage, but highlight them because that's our highest number of employees on any plan.
Okay. And the comment is just a general one. I mean, I know you've worked hard to try and get this below 3%, but the question arises, it's 3% this year and 3% next year and 4%, 2% in a decade. We've got 30% increase. I think there needs to be, some serious consideration, if not this year in the future, to belt tightening. That may involve decreasing personnel, retiring, not replacing people. I don't think that 3% is every year is completely sustainable.
Thank you, sir.
In my opinion.
Anybody? I want to just check out mine. I was going to go back and forth. Anybody online?
How are they handling?
Young lady in the back. Name and address.
Hi, Janet Nicolini, Madison Avenue. I'm actually not looking to ask you to reduce the budget. I actually think it's low, given what you do know today. And specifically, I feel like the CIP appears to be underfunded because you know about a couple of projects that aren't even in there yet. Some really big projects. And last year we had more than $3.8 million in overages that had to be addressed in special appropriations. And there is already a plan to add $1 million for roads as a special appropriation because it's not in the budget. And the reason that matters is that the budget increase here that you're presenting here to people today looks artificially low. And it gives people a false sense of security. And so it's lower than it should be. And I think the people of Madison are going to have to pay a piper over the next few years when these bigger projects start happening. And you had a line up there about prioritization. Well, the second reason that this matters is that there are items in the CIP that are optional, and this public has not had the opportunity to vote on those projects. So essentially, when we vote the budget in, we're saying okay to the CIP the way it is. There are a couple of projects in there that in some people should have the opportunity to say if they should be prioritized or not over the town garage and the circle. So the way the CIP process is, we don't get that opportunity to say, we don't want a $3.5 million artificial turf field. We don't get that opportunity. And that something just doesn't sit right with that. So I don't have a question. That's just my piece.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, everyone so far, for keeping it under 3 minutes. I do appreciate that. Anybody else in the public would like to speak? Yeah, address for the record, please.
Sure. Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. I had a couple of questions. The first one, can you explain the OPED? I watched your last meeting where the presentation was there and the funding and what needs to be done with that. I really didn't understand
So
the whole thing, really.
So OPEB, for public knowledge, is other post-employment benefits. People retire. So I just want to start this. A lot of people don't know what OPEB means, and it's an obligation that we have, right? So whether we pre-funded or not, we have to pay, just like a pension or anything else. So other post-employment benefits have been paid, almost pay as you go, for lack of better terms, for a long time, and I'm talking even The actuarials gave statements, maybe 50% of the towns now have started some sort of funding mechanism. Some haven't, and to open a trust to fund it doesn't mean you funded it. So that's what it is, and so the question becomes, what does the town of Madison want to do? There are advantages if you put the money in a trust, because they changed, in layman's terms, the actual rate they use to calculate the contributions you need to make, right? Because they switched the rates and how they do it if you open a trust and fund the trust. But then you have, the comment was made at the end of that meeting, that you have money that so it's not like you're going to earn more because it's a pension like, and you were earning nothing, because your general fund, as you can see in this here, would use some of that money because we're earning that interest on that. So it's other post-employment benefits. It's an obligation the town has to pay. And there's discussion that we want to start to fund it. Well, not upfront, so long, but fund it now and start to add to that every year.
Now, does like the increase in healthcare costs, does that affect what our future liability would be?
No.
More so than,
That stays, Joe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
yeah, no,
Yes, that stays for the health insurance. That other post-employment benefits isn't really going to change. It's an obligation we have with the making, but the health insurance is more, it's a separate subject.
right. And then the other question, to kind of reiterate the frustration that Janet has and some of the other people with the way we're funding things, doesn't seem like it's with the CIP, it doesn't seem like it's always all there, so this current budget, we're like almost just under 4 million in projects we knew were over budget. When we did the budget the previous year, we didn't update them in CIP. The year before that, 25, the auditors said it was 5.8 something million, so it's almost 10 million in projects over in 2 years. And you guys knew that, or somebody in town knew that, but the public didn't when they were doing these budgets. We were going to vote on a budget. We didn't know that, okay, next 2 years we're going to spend $10 million on projects that are already in CIP. When a project goes in, and you say, okay, this is going to be, $1 million to redo the garage or something, right? And then it sits there for a couple of years, and then it all of a sudden becomes an $8 million project. The people have no recourse on that. They can't say, if it's a garage, it's something that's needed, or fire apparatus. But if it's, hey, we're going to build a remote control airplane field, and we thought it was going to be $500,000, now it's $2 million. But we're just going to go ahead with it. The town has no way to say, like, whoa, we need to kind of rethink this. You got 8 people in town that are going to use this. We have the DPW garage. I've seen that up in 2 or 3 meetings, and it's a $10 million project, and it's not in CIP really. It was daunting to put in CIP. So, and that sounds like it's a ready to go project. So are we going to use like the academy bonding money that's left over for that? Like if that was in there, maybe people would say, maybe we don't do the turf field, maybe we do grass, fund the garage. That's something that's needed. And then same thing with the special appropriations. Just I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting, and I still can't understand, like, so if we're gonna do a special appropriation for the roads for $1 million, which everybody wants, why isn't just in the budget, and instead of doing the 400,000 out of the general fund now, why don't we do 1.4, and it's just in there and done, and all the other little things like that, instead of making it a process. We know we're going to do these things, we want to do these things. It's just at the end of this, anything that comes up should just be minor or unforeseen things. These are all foreseen.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Anybody else in the public would like to speak?
You address it.
Anybody online?
Can you respond to that?
Can you respond to that?
In what way?
To what he was saying?
They respond to the OPED, as far as the special appropriations or the CIP, we can walk you through the process. But there is the opportunity to vote on this budget that has the CIP for fiscal 27 in it. Let's shake their hand behind first, if you don't mind.
So what you're saying is if we don't agree with this, then we have to vote the budget down. It's the only recourse to correct the system.
If you don't agree with what's in the CIP, yes.
Okay, I have one question and a comment. Terry Van Andel, Bartlett Drive. Curious how much of the school budget goes to special interests such as sports and drama programs. I understand there's a pay to play, where those who do play end up paying something, but is there a sliding scale such that those who can pay more do? And how many millions go into those programs? When I looked on the per pupil expenditures by function, it's difficult to tell on there because it doesn't really specify. It talks about instruction per student. That's $38 million that goes to, this is the 2024 budget, not current. Support services is 7 million. Support services for instruction is 3 million. And then transportation is 4.3 million. So I'm wondering if any portion of that goes into the special interest versus educating students academically. How much of the Madison education budget goes into those other things? And can you do a sliding scale, increase the amount that individual families pay for that based on their needs?
Well, I'd answer that as you go. You have to,
Okay, and then I gotta come.
go ahead.
Okay, it seems like in this town, I've lived here since 1972. My parents were seniors. And I remember them talking about town budget, the education budget, and how seniors were often left behind when considering how much is put into supporting them. Bruce Wilson just pointed out that $20,000 was cut out of the Meals for Wheels program. To me, that's obscene. Let me tell you something else, okay? I'm now a senior. I'm in the position my parents were in. I'm on Social Security, and I get more than or less than $2,400 a month Social Security. Do you know what my payment went up from 2025 to 2026? Social Security, on the average, went up $54 per month per Social Security recipient. Then Medicare takes their cut. So now it's $36 per month for somebody who is taking home, after working their whole lives, just over $2,000. We really have to relook where are our priorities and rebalance how we're spending money on this town. It's obviously very lopsided and it's not fair at all. It needs to be changed.
There. I let Craig answer towards that question. I mentioned put 100,000 aside for Meals on Wheels to help fund it. We did not cut it and eliminate. We know it's very important. Sometimes you say something and we'll hear it and feel it's true. So I just want to be clear, and Bruce will be the first one to tell you that. You want to answer that question?
Sure. So students pay, or families pay $125 for pay with play. They do not pay more. We work with families that maybe can't make that payment. So some may pay less than that, but no one pays more unless they're playing hockey or downhill skiing or something like that. So there's additional costs for those sports, but it's a standard fee. And to be transparent, my opinion is if our budget number was less this year, we probably would have eliminated pay per play. I just want to be transparent on that because we're one of the few districts that do make that charge. We're one of 3 towns in our athletic conference that has that charge. So it is something the board's looked at, and I think at some point they'll consider that. The budget does lay up.
Proud of the fact that Board of Ed decrease, they're asking from 6% increase to 4.2% increase. Let me point out to you again, Social Security went up only 2.4%, and inflation is below 3%. So why should the Board of Ed go up higher? Everybody has to pay more for medical expenses, and some can't. You shouldn't be asking everyone else to pay for an inflated budget. You have to have a balance in this town, and right now we do not. We haven't had it for decades.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public would like to speak? Second time with public. I want to see if anybody else didn't want to speak for the first time. Is that all right? Anybody else for the first time? Good.
Just wondering if you knew offhand what the spend per student was,
Well, I'm sure. Right, Dr. Cook does.
where that falls like in relation to other towns, and if it includes, the town picks up maintenance, I believe. I don't know, other towns exactly the same way.
Yeah. So there's a formula to compare all towns to each other. So every town is similar. The state does that. So we're always behind in terms of where that is. So we're on 23, 24. So actually no, we have 24, 25, $26,293 per student.
That what you want, Nate?
Yeah, now, does that include the town's maintenance portion also, or is that?
Yeah, so it looks at each year, Stacy Nobitz fills out our report and she puts all that may be on the town side or any in-kind services, things like that.
And how does that compare to other towns? Where do we fall?
So if you look at the state, we're 50th from the top. If you look at our district reference group, we're second. And so those are just, some comparisons on that. Very much fluctuates by district, by how many students, because obviously, everybody has, a superintendent, assistant superintendent, but if you have, 6,000 students versus 2,400 students, that's going to make a difference. So our size district does impact that.
Yeah, I thought in one of the meetings, somebody said that it was only credits spent more per student. Is that accurate?
No. So that's in our reference group. So that mentioned we're second in our district reference group.
Okay.
Greenwich is number one in our that's that. But when you look at the state as a whole, we're 50th.
Yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
Andy Valambrosa, Horse Pond Road. Just want to make a quick comment. I think I've been here for 27 years and I think we need to stop allocating money from wants to needs. It seems that the special interest projects are just eating up our tax dollars. The school wanting all this, I think it's a school that's doing this, the AstroTurf, artificial turf for $3.5 million. That's a want. That's not a need. I played a lot of ball in my lifetime and I never had any issues with playing on turf. I think that needs to be considered and I think it should come up to a vote. The citizens need to vote on this. There's been a lot of wasted money in this town. There's been a lot of projects that went belly up and millions of dollars. We really need to tighten our belts in this town and it's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy. Sorry, I see anybody else for the first time. I'm going to invite you. Anybody else for the first time? Go ahead, sir.
Hey, Dr. Cook, what's our student teacher ratio?
So fluctuates across the board. So kindergarten might be 18-1. We might have a class at the high school that we're running 10-1, and other classes at the high school might be 24-1. So it's going to fluctuate across the board. To be specific.
So 10-1 seems pretty generous.
Yeah. So that,
More like Chubb, Madison.
so that's not the average. That would be a specific course that we're running. To commitment we've made to students that we're gonna have an advanced placement course. At the end of their 5 years or 4 years of Spanish, something like that. That's where we're looking at those numbers.
Anybody else in the public would like to speak? Second time. Being anybody online? Public information session is closed. As I said earlier, the referendum is April 28th, 2026. Thank you everyone for your input. Anybody on the board want to finish? Thank you everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you. Public information session is closed at 7:37.